Questions, 5 minutes. Yes.
I guess I just wanted to, I don't know if it's a bit of a dirty word in a kind of new materialist context, but I wanted to ask about the numinous in relation to space, but as we kind of head towards a neoliberal eschaton, how we can kind of, I guess, entangle these ideas of collective sovereignty as distinct projectile sovereignty with, sacred, really.
With?
The sacred or the numinous,
Yeah. Well, I think kind of Moten's writing about free jazz, talks a little bit about that, right? Because it's like very much it stages it's a black musical tradition that explicitly sometimes stages this kind of question about that which is beyond the empirical. Sun Ra would maybe be most sort of, kind of taking it to the end point. But then I think, that sort of gives us the kind of sense that these kinds of modes of approaching the sacred are always kind of located within a specific kind of context. And I suppose one of the things that's become clearer to me undertaking kind of intercultural work is the sense that when we're talking about public in a sort of supposedly neutral kind of, Western secular kind of model, we're talking about a Christian heritage model of public and private, and a lot of the time, and well, always actually. And so I guess the question is, in terms of building an actual collective relation that can cross some of those kinds of latent cultural boundaries, we would have to desacralize even further our concepts of secularity. I think this is what I understand to be kind of Spivak's argument a lot of the time, where she just says that, all of these assertions of kind of collectivity in the name of the public, if they're still coming with this certain mode of public and private that hasn't really understood how specific it is, then it's always going to be exclusionary. And I guess this to me is sort of highlighting Hirschhorn's sort of, idea of the non-exclusive audience that I think we can all sign up to, but then when you see that mode of operation, there's only a certain kind of way that you can get involved in that infrastructurally, right? Yeah. So I don't think it really answers your question, but that's kind of maybe a way I think of it.
Danny, that was a fantastic talk. I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to make a little anecdote to begin with, and then bridge it to some of the points I think that came out of Susan's and Gary's talk as well. In terms of Hirschhorn's projects, it's hard to really verify the consequences because of the idea of verification. It's not built into it in as well as it could be, perhaps. But anecdotally, we can all trade on them. One anecdote that I found particularly interesting about the one in Kassel, in Documenta, was that at one point, the camera equipment was stolen. And I thought the reaction that it produced, the theft that it produced, was very interesting. It was described as, not as a police issue, where someone had to go and arrest the apprehender or recover the goods. It wasn't even discussed as a aesthetic problem, like how am I now going to make my work with the artists. But it was discussed as a community problem. We all have to now deal with this theft, is what the discussion was. And that dispersal of responsibility meant that in fact someone knew who stole it. And the goods were in fact returned. But I found the other two responses were not foremost. And that complicates some of the critical discussion, I think, that is often directed at many of these works, if you talk that perspective. And so it's the question of perspective that I want to bring to you, which goes back to the wonderful phrase, frontal ontology. Because you, I think, very accurately critiqued both the Nietzschean and the Kantian perspectives as both being linear, whether it's from the perspective of the viewer or the perspective of the emitter, the artist or the public. The problem is that it was meant to be seen as a linear kind of transmission process. And you introduced a third category, which is another perspective, which is the category of artistic infrastructure, the answer to the question of mobility and relations. I would like you to elaborate, if you can, on this other perspective as bridging this infrastructure as a perspective. How would you mobilise that perspective and describe the kinds of relations and mobilities that are formed from, or at least understood and represented from that perspective?
As always, Nikos, you have great questions and ones that could be answered in, I don't think I could respond to adequately, but just to say that I'm not, because I'm not really thinking through the linearity, I don't think I can put it in those terms, but I guess maybe I can go to a kind of question about perspective and the critical perspective, because I think that's something that's sort of underlying the preoccupations in this paper. And I guess it's sort of becoming, seems to becoming clearer to me about, firstly, the need to protect the independent critical viewer in relationship, in contradistinction to the curatorial as a kind of organisational infrastructure which presupposes a positive outcome for the work. And then, but then through that to also, I guess, understand with a certain, try and understand with some kind of rigour what it means to attend to the gap between the critical discussion of the work and the work. So I'm trying, particularly in this paper, not to talk about the work's effects. Actually, I think I'm taking a critique of Hirschhorn's position as articulated about what he's trying to do with the work, and then his relationship institutionally to the forces that support the work, which I see as being quite distinct from the work. So there's a whole lot of things that go on in perspectives from the work, but I think I would say that, in all of my reading about, say, the Gramsci Monument, the most interesting responses are from people like Munoz or, Ligon or Fred Moten, who are affectively already connected into that site before and after the work arrives. And so I think they account for the movement in a much more sort of, I think a lot of the kind of white critiques of the work either went into a sort of Kester-like, this is terrible because it's just supporting the art world, or, all these things happened, it's great, we never know what's going to happen with art, art's wonderful. I think, the people of, the people, who are already connected in there are bringing that other perspective, and I think their critical accounts are what sort of interests me as maybe raising, that's maybe what's raised the question about the perspectives.
Okay, one last question, please.
I'm grappling with your use of the word infrastructure. Just finished reading Olivia Lang's The Lonely City, which I found extraordinary volume,
Right.
talking about particularly Warhol, but looking, she seems to depict the artist searching for infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether you could comment that. Are we talking about the search for an infrastructure?
Well, I think isn't something about the kind of avant-garde paradigm always about the potential of creating the infrastructure for our world to come in every moment? Yeah, that's so I think, there's I think every, artistic kind of, initiative is always, as I see it, well, through students in particular, always on the one hand trying to hold on to that possibility of the new infrastructure which is going to emerge, while grappling with the institutional reality of how unsupportive of that new world the existing infrastructures sort of are.
The Lang seems to suggest that the AIDS epidemic supplied the infrastructure, which is a different kind of infrastructure than, say, Susan and I would be dealing with
Yeah.
in terms of the wires that connect.
Yeah. Well, I think this is maybe one thing, like thinking about, say, social media, something I think about a lot as a kind of new kind of critical infrastructure where, a hashtag can be an infrastructure, right? Like it's completely ephemeral in some respects, and yet in the case of, North Dakota Access Pipeline, fundamental in connecting people together and allowing a kind of communications channel. And yet how to create that is sort of, not necessarily a clear kind of thing, but to me it does work as a kind of infrastructure, right? It provides an answer to this question of how do I connect to, the global extraction industries that are kind of, poisoning the world. I can do it through this, right, and through this movement, but I may be in Melbourne or I may be in, closer to North Dakota, but it sort of comes through that range. So yeah, so maybe my sense from the talks this morning as well is that I was just really struck by this idea that, for a young person, talking about this continuity of modernist ideas of the city, of like, yes, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? So if I can go to Shanghai where there are screens where, I know how to work screens because if I don't personally, but if I'm a young person who's on Instagram or social media, I know how to work a screen. I know what a screen is. Here is a place where all these screens exist. It's a new kind of thing, right? It's not like it's an infrastructure. It's not like a rail line or something. It's something else going on, emergent kind of infrastructure.
On that note, I think the idea of infrastructure as a continuum, as a problematic, as a sign of contestation, we will continue to take through. But on that note, can you please join me in thanking Danny for this?